So for today's video, I am going to be showing you my pouch for the cell phones. So there are a few different versions of this. There is the 6x10 hoop and the 5x7 hoop, and depending on what phone, obviously, will determine on which one will fit yours. So this one is actually called a narrow for the 5x7 hoop. That is the plaid one here. And the one underneath it is actually the wide version for the 5x7 hoop. So you can see the difference there. And I have an iPhone 6 with an OtterBox on it as well. It has this little fly grip thing on the back. And this is the narrow version. And I can put it in and snap it closed. So this one, this size will fit around whatever an iPhone 6 size would be. And then for the larger one, this is the iPhone 6s Plus. So you need the bigger one. So this is the wide version, but I don't have a long enough tab on this one. So you get a few different tab options. You have this longer tab that is like a square. Then you have this shorter tab, which is rounded. And you would definitely need a longer tab to fit this one, but that would be tight. And you also can do it with no top tab. You could just do it with the two together. And there is one that's kind of like this, that's a little more rounded, that comes with the pattern. So there's a couple different options for that. And then there also is the option of a larger pattern that fits the mini iPad or the iPad mini. So that would be this size. As well, for the cell pouch version, this one is the wider version of the 6x10 hoop. So you can see the difference in that one. And this one will fit the larger phones with lots of space inside. So you can see there's a lot of space left, wiggle room, and it goes in pretty deep. So there's that one that will fit those who have bigger phones. And this is about the size of what it looks like on there. All right, so today the one that we are going to be doing is actually this one. That is the wider version of the 6x10 hoop, and it actually doesn't come with a strap. So it's just like this. The file is like this, and then you can either make your own strap, as I do with them. So for the straps, I use a 3-inch wide piece by 12-inch, and then it's a wrist leash kind of strap. So that's what I usually do. But with the pattern today, what I decided to try, and it's not in the pattern, but I just did this last night, and I decided to add a shoulder strap to it, and then I hacked the pattern by adding eyelets, or I guess these are grommets, to either side. Then I looped the keyring through and put those on there, and it makes a really fabulous little cell pouch that you can wear as a crossbody. So I made 2 of those. As well, these wider version of the 6x10 will fit kind of like a little wallet in it, not with the phone, but this one's for my daughter, and this is her little wallet. So you can see it fits inside very well, so she can carry that. So this pattern has a zip on the front, and it's fully lined. So you can see that. As well, on the inside of this pattern, there are 3 card slots. Let me see here. So you've got 1, 2, 3 spots for cards that you can put in there and take with you. All right, so today, this is what we're doing, and we're going to get started on this version. All right, so the things that we are going to need to do the project today is we need, for the top tab part, we are going to need 2 pieces, one outside, one lining, and if you would like to, a piece of fusible fleece or batting on the inside of that one. That will be the first hoop if you are using the top tab. Now, what we are going to need for hoop number 1 is going to be, so I'm just going to take this apart. So you need a piece for the outside that is going to be on the back, and you need a full-size piece for that one. And then you're going to need, for the card pockets, you're going to need a long piece like that, and that will be going in the center for card pockets. And then on the side of that, you're going to need 2 other pieces that will be folding out. And those are the things that are going to be needed for the hoop 1. I mean hoop 1, as long as you're not doing the tab there, is called hoop 1. And for the backing part with the zipper, you're going to need some sort of a loop with a keyring thing on it. And I have a fold over elastic. You need a front part, so this will be above the zipper. And this one, I've cut a bit bigger because I'm going to fussy cut it, is going to be on the bottom of the zipper part. And then underneath that, you're going to need a lining for the top. Then you need the lining for the bottom, and you need a lining for the zipper pocket itself, and then you need a lining for the inside of the bag. So there are a few pieces to this, but it all turns out so beautifully. Oh yeah, I forgot, you need these little tabs as well for this hoop here. This is hoop number 2. So these tabs go at the end of the zippers. So that is what you're going to need. All right, so the first thing that we are going to get started with is we are going to get started with the top flap, I guess it's called. And you need your hoop with some stabilizer in it. I like a very lightweight cutaway for this. If you use a tearaway, you have to make sure to take it out, otherwise your bag is going to be crinkly. And I just like the tearaway, or the lightweight cutaway. I think you don't really hear it, and it gives it a nice shape. So the first thing is we have to go run the placement stitch on this hoop. Alright, so I went and I did the placement stitch for the top tab part. This one in the middle is if you're going to be using a, it's called a magnetic snap, is what you would use that for. Other than that, you could use it for a cam snap if you really want to poke through ahead of time. So what we need here is we need a piece of batting. It helps with the shape of the flap. And what I have done here is I have this line that goes across, and that is where you're going to be putting the batting up to. You need a little bit of space above that so that you don't have that in the seam allowance. So once you have that down, you put your piece that you want for the front of the bag, and you can put that face up on top of that. And the one that you want for the inside of the bag, you put that facing down. Oh, and I need to say that on all my pieces of fabric, I do have an SF101 Pellon interfacing. I use it on anything I make that is used with fabric. Right, so you put that over top. Then you take this one right side face down like this, over all the placement stitches, tape it down, and take it back to the machine and run the final stitch to hold it together. Alright, so I have gone back and I have run the final stitch. So this is the back of it. It shows you where the center is for that magnetic snap if you want it. So the next thing is to cut it out. So now that it is all cut out, what we can do is we take it and flip it to the right side. I like using this point turner. So you just run it along the bottom, up the sides, and there we have our top flap done. So at this point you can give it a press. And then as an extra detail, what I like to do is I like it to take it back to a regular sewing machine, and I like to sew a stitch, a triple stitch on the regular machine down here around the front and back up. But that's just something optional. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. All right, so I'm going to go do that, and then the next thing is we're going to start with the bag hoop number 1. Alright, so we are going to be starting hoop number 1 for the bag, and I went ahead and I ran the placement stitch for that. So what we will need first is we're going to need the piece of long material that is going to be used to make the card slot. And what you need to do is you need to either tape it down, or I like spray adhesive, and we need to put it between those 2 center lines. So I always leave just a little bit extra sticking out the top. You can put it right to it. I just like to have the extra little bit of seam allowance, and then you put your material right in the center. There we go. And you're going to need to tape it down just a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it back to the machine, and we are going to be running the bottom for the first pocket. So it's the pocket tack down for the first one. So we will go do that and be right back. All right, so I went and I ran that stitch. It's a little hard to see here for you because it's in red. So it's that stitch that is right here. So that's right here. So the next thing that you need to do for the card slot is you take all the excess at the end here and you flip it up. And this is why I like to have a little iron handy here. I like to give it a little iron, a little quick iron. It helps keep that up in place. And then to make the top of the pocket, we are going to be taking something that is straight or a ruler, or I just use a piece of cardboard, and you put it up underneath and you line it up with these first 2 markings at the top here. So see, there's 3 markings. So what you need to do is you need to take this piece and you would line it up with the ones at the top, and then you will take this and flip it right back over and make sure that it's in alignment right down the center there. And you can just slip this out and then tape it into place if that's how you would like to do it. I like to iron it, so I'm going to put it back up. And then give it a little iron. I find that gives it a little more crispness at the top. And something else I will do sometimes is I add, depending on the material, I will add just a little piece of fusible hemming stuff. So I just put that in there. And I put that like that. It also just helps to stiffen up the edge, depending on the material that you're using. If you're using a stiff material, I would not do that. All right, so now that we have the bottom here and the top folded piece at the first line, you take this and you put it back, and you need to tape it down here again. Tape that in place. And then we need to go back and we need to run what is the second piece of the tack down. So it's the second bottom piece of the pocket. So that's what we're going to do next. Alright, so I have done the second bottom of the pocket tack down, and then we need to do the same thing as we did for the first one. So you need to take all of your excess material, flip it up, give it a little press, highly recommended. Then take this and put it on the second lines now for the top of the second pocket. So you just line that up, flip this back, make sure it's between the lines. That way you'll get a nice straight top on it. Don't iron on your tape. And I'm going to put another little piece of that hemming tape in there. And we need to take it back to the machine, and we will do that all over again. So we'll do another of the bottom, make sure it's in between the lines. So now we're going to take it and we're going to go back and we're going to do the bottom of the third pocket tack down, and I will be right back. And there we have the third one done for the third pocket. Take these little tapes off, and it will be the same thing as before. Flip it up, and this time we're using the third line. So now we have 3 pockets. We have 1, we have 2, and we have 3. So we have the 3 pockets done. And if you have a little bit of extra at the bottom, which I tend to have a little bit of extra, I like to be safe and have a bit more than not enough. So we just need to tape this down kind of on the end here, because next we're going to be adding these side ones. So I just tape it there. And we will be needing the 2 pieces for the sides. So for the first one, it's the one on what would be my right side. So what you do is you take your piece, and whichever way you want it to be up, make sure that that's the way it's facing, and then turn it over and align it to the edge of these pockets. Make sure all the pockets stay in a line, and then you will put this on the edge just like that. Tape that in place, and then we will be taking it back to the machine and doing a tack down line to hold this into place. So this is, I guess it's the right side tack down. Alright, so we did the right side tack down, and the next thing is we need to just flip this over gently, and you can tape it down. I give it a press, and then we need to take it back to the machine, and we're going to be running the triple bean stitch that is a little decorative stitch on here as the next step. Alright, so I went ahead and I did that right bean stitch on here to keep the edge down. And the next thing that needs to be done is we have an edge stitch that goes along here. And this edge stitch is important because this is one of the lines you'll be using to match it up to the next hoop. So do not skip this. So I'm going to go back and run that edge stitch. Alright, so I went and I ran this edge stitch right down here, and that's going to keep it in place, and it's used for lining. So there you go. You can cut a little bit of this off if you want. but you don't need to. I like to have a little bit extra in my seam allowance to work with anyway. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take the next piece that goes on the other side, and we are going to do the exact same thing. We're going to put it like this, run the stitch that holds it down, flip it over, run the bean stitch that goes on top for the left side, and then we're going to run an edge stitch as well to hold it down. Alright, so I went back and I did that triple bean stitch there. I did the edge stitch on the left side, and I have also done this stitch at the top here. Now this is the optional portion to add the flap. So you can make this bag without the flap, but you do have the option to put the flap if you want. So I guess it all depends on the size of the phone and the look you want. So to add the flap, you need to run the placement stitch for that. And if you can see, right in the middle here, we have this little tiny mark that comes out. And that is a center mark, so that you can align your piece up on the center. So what I like to do is I just like to push that up just a little bit using my friction pens. And then what you need to do is you need to find the center of your tab. So you just fold it in half, find the center on the one side. I usually mark it on both. There we go. Now for this one, I am going to want this part on the outside of my bag. So what you need to do is you need to put the side that would be the lining, that will be placed down on this. And you need to take it and line up the center stitch. There, so you line it up to the placement line, and then you go above it by a little bit. There we go. So now that you have it on the placement line, then you tape it, and you will be bringing it back to the machine to run the tack down stitching to hold it in place. All right. So we went and we did that tack down stitch. Take the tape off. So the next thing that we have to do, show you that there. The next thing that we have to do is we have to add what is going to be on the pouch, on the back outside of the pouch. So we have one full piece of the outside material, and if you want, so this is the top of your bag up here, and this is the bottom of your bag. So you need to lay your fabric if it's directional facing the right way. So I want mine facing like this when I am done. So I'm going to put it down like that. And you either tape it in place or pin it in place, and then you take it back to the machine, and we are going to be running the stitch at the top, which goes like this. So it's just a little stitch, and we will come back when that's done. So we have done that top stitch there, and now this first hooping is done, and we can take it out. Okay, for this bag, you can, it depends on how thick you want it. I have a double layer in here of stabilizer, which I actually like, which is why I did it that way. I'm just going to cut that piece off. But you can take the stabilizer out of here now if you wish. I'm just leaving it because I actually have a very lightweight cutaway and you can't hear it, and I like the bag texture that it gives. Alright, so the next thing that we have to do is we need to turn it or we need to cut it out along here. That is now cut, and I do recommend clipping the corners because it is a rounded top, and you really need to make sure that for the little portion that's here that you do cut into there without cutting the stitches, because you need these two to be very straight. So now we go ahead and flip it. As you can see, you need to round it off here and then pull out this portion here to make it nice and straight. Not this. This is not what you do. This is what you do. So let's go back over here, lift that up, and that is why you need the corners to be nice there. Because if you don't do that, it's not going to attach properly at all. All right. Something else I like to do that's just a little trick of mine is I like to take a little piece of that iron-on hemming, and in the portion here that is inside right here, not outside the line, but right here, just at the top, I like to put a little piece of this iron-on hem, and I find that that really helps to keep that in place when I'm trying to match them up. All right, and the next thing that we need to do is we need to cut down the sides straight. Now, I suggest leaving extra space. It is meant to fit in the 6x10 hoop, which is why there is not that much space on either side of it. So for these lines that are down the sides here, I suggest leaving space about 1/4 of an inch or so on the outside of them. So I just take my rotary cutter, and that way you'll have something to tape down in the next hoop. Alright, so you don't want to cut anything off at the bottom because you're going to need something there for the seam allowance for the next bag. And this part of the bag is now all done. You see up top there, nice and straight little corners. So you can put this away, and then we will be starting on hoop number 2. Alright, so now we're going to be starting with hoop number 2, and what I have done is I have hooped some stabilizer. I used 1 layer of my lightweight tearaway for this one because there's quite a bit more fabric on this side, and I have run the placement stitch, which is for the zipper, and then this shows you the outline of the pouch. One of the things that you have to do first for this pattern, it's really important, is these two here that are on the outside. You need to extend them further so that you will be able to line the first hoop up properly. There we go. So extend those out so that you will be able to see them. And then these little ones that are right here and right here, I like to extend those out too, because those are going to be used for the tab on the zipper, and you need to be able to see them as well. Alright, so now that we have those down, the next thing that we have to do at this point is we need to add the zipper. Now, I like to use zipper tape, but any type of standard zipper will work for this. I like to use probably a number 3 zipper. The number 5 I think is a little bit big for this pattern. So what I like to do on my zippers is, this is the top of the bag up here. So you can see that this part down here is smaller and this part's larger. So this is the top of your bag up here. And what I like to do with my zippers is I like to use something called Wonder Tape. I find that it just really helps keep my zippers in place, as well as helping with material. So it's probably a little hard to see because it's like a clear style tape, but you can kind of see it. And I like to have that there because it allows me to avoid having tape on the zipper, and it just holds the zipper in place. So then what you need to do is a 1-inch zipper will fit exactly between these lines. However, most zippers are not exactly 1 inch. Some are, the pre-made ones. But the important thing is, so you're putting your zipper with the teeth right side facing up. So what you need to make sure is that the center that you can see here underneath when you pull it just a little bit, that center needs to match up with the center here. Right, so you can see my zipper's on there, very nice, nice and tight, and it's nicely held down. So the next thing that we have to do is we have to take it back and we need to run the zipper tack down. Alright, so I went and I ran the zipper tack down, and the next thing I like to do at this point is I like to take the hoop, flip it to the back side, so you can see all the stitching right there, and you can see these lines. So the center line is from the placement stitch, so this one's a placement stitch line. This is also the original placement stitch line, and what you want to do is you want to go between these two tack down lines, and you want to cut out this part of the stabilizer because it is easier at this point, and that way you don't have to tear anything out or cut anything later. So you can see you just want this little middle piece to come out. Make sure you leave these stitches for the tack down intact. You do not want to cut those out. You just want that little center piece of stabilizer to come out, and just between these lines is fine. Alright, so the next thing that we have to do is we need to move on and we need to add the tabs. So I put the back ones on first usually. So I'm going to flip it over to the back side, and you take it with the right side face down. These lines here that are sticking out from the zipper area, those are the lines that you need to put the tabs, so instead of lining them up to it, just push them over it just a little bit to give them a little bit of wiggle room there. And go ahead and tape those into place. So they need to be between the zipper, obviously, because it's zipper tabs. So it's one side. And also, something you need to remember is that you have this part here that's a little bit bigger. So when you're putting your tab on, you need to make sure when it's flipped up that it is going to be coming part back here. It needs to come over the line up here to be in the seam properly. So let me see there. This is my hoop, the right side. Facing, the top is up here and the bottom is down here, so that's what it looks like. And then you move to the front side and you do the same thing. So you find the right side of your fabric, you're going to have the right side down, and you're going to put it, again, just past the line a little bit. And because I have used this other sticky stuff here, I don't actually have to hold on to that. Now, for the one at the top, before you put the top tab, you must move the zipper into the bag. Very important. And that's another reason I like this tape, because it holds it nicely together. So then again, you take this one, face it right side down, and put it over that just a little bit. All right, so now we take it back to the machine and we run the tack down stitch to hold those in place. So I went and ran those tack down stitches, and now we need to cut out a little bit of the zipper tape because you don't want too much of that in the seam allowance. It is going to make it hard to turn the bag, especially up there. So just take your scissors . All right, now that we have that done, what we need to do is we need to take the tab pieces and move them up out of the way. So you can either do it the way that I do it by using the Wonder Tape, or you move them up and then you tape them. And make sure that this goes above the top line. All right, so the tabs are out of the way, and oh, it's a little hard to see, but now we're going to be working on the side that is smaller. So this is the bottom big part and this is the smaller top part. And I am on the underside of the hoop. So what you need is you need the fabric that is going to be for the lining in the zipper pocket, and you take that and you place it right side face down and you line it up to the edge of the placement stitching on the zipper area, and then you go ahead and tape that into place. Flip it over, and again it's the smaller area at the top that we're working at. And something that I actually like to do, let's move that out of the way for a sec, with my pieces for the front. So this is going to be my piece for the front, and what I like to do is I like to have a nice edge next to the zipper. So what I do is I flip it to the back side, I measure, I want about a 1/2 inch seam or 1/2 inch fold over, so I measure about 1 inch in, and then I go ahead and I take my straight edge and iron it. See, I just take my straight part and I put it right there, and then I iron it down. Okay, so for this I need to put just a little bit more of my tape in here to hold it up here. Alright, so because of the way I place the zipper on the Wonder Tape, I still have some sticky part of the tape sticking out here, which is what I want. So I take this piece and the part that I have folded, so my little folded finished edge right here, I take it and I keep the zipper closed and I butt it up to the zipper where I would actually like it to go, and then I lay it on nice and straight here. And then, because I have the sticky tape there, so when I push it down, it sticks, and then all I have to do is flip it over and then just tape that into place, because we need to get in there and move the zipper. So now that I have that done, then we need to take it back and we need to run the tack down that is going to hold this, the lining and this piece, to the zipper area. And when we're doing that, it's important to know that some machines will not fit the zipper beside them. So what you may have to do, you have to know the foot on your machine. You may have to start the stitch. So we start this in the bottom position. So you may have to start the stitch, stop it, move this back up, flip it, and then go the rest of the way, and then it comes back, stop it, and then you move this down, flip it, and do the rest of the stitch. So just know that your machine, you need to know your machine, so be careful about the foot size. Alright, so I went and I did the tack down, so that's what it looks like on the front. Oops. And this is what it looks like on the back. And the next thing that we need to do is we need to flip this piece over. So if you don't have an edge like I do, what you need to do is you need to flip it over and figure out where it is you want to place it. But for me, I have the edge already, so I just lay it down like that, and then I'm going to take it back to the machine and run the bean stitching that's going to hold that edge into place. Alright, so I have gone and done that bean stitch, and I did have to move my zipper down out of the way throughout the process. I have a very large foot. So the next thing that's going to happen is there's a stitch at the edge that's a tack down that matches the tack down of the first hooping. So if you have a type of tearaway stabilizer in here that you want to take off at this point, you would run this stitch, turn it over, and then inside the bag area, take out the stabilizer that you don't want there, and then you would have to flip the bottom piece up and then run that stitch again. However, I don't mind this material in here, so all I'm going to do at this point is take my piece on the underside of the hoop. I'm just going to flip it back up. Piece of tape there. And then I am just going to tape this out of the way now. So now we need to take it back to the machine and run this stitch that will go in here. Alright, I have gone and run that edge tack down stitching on the smaller side, and now we are going to add the lining and the front material, same on this side as we did on this side. And again, I do like to use a material that I have folded and ironed into place so I have the edge. And now that we have done that, we're going to take it back to the machine and do the tack down stitch. Alright, so I went ahead and I did the tack down stitch, and then I did the bean stitch that goes on top of it, and I had to move my zipper again. So the next thing is, if you are actually going to be adding anything to the front of the bag here at the bottom part, you would want to do it now before you do the lining. If you're doing something up top here, you would have to do that before you flip the lining there too. So if you're going to add something, now's the time. But if you're going to take out the stabilizer like you would do on this side, then the next stitch is an edge stitch. So you would run that stitch, flip it over again, take out your stabilizer that would be inside the rounded portion here, and then you would flip your lining material, which is what I'm going to do now, because I'm not taking that out. So you would flip your lining material to the right side, showing. You would tape it down, and then take this back to the machine and run the stitch on this side. Oops. Run the stitch on this side that is going to hold these two pieces together. Also to note is, if you're using the magnetic snap, you would want to install the snap before you do the lining piece. You don't want the snap on the inside of the lining piece. So what you want to do is you want to do, again, the tack down, then the snap, and then move the lining. So really the lining piece only gets moved when you're done working on this side of the piece. Alright, so I went and I did that tack down stitch up here on the edge, so it's on the back here. And I also went and I ran the placement stitch right here for the little loop ring. So you can use what I'm using, it's just called a fold over elastic, or you can make one out of the material or use whatever it is you prefer. So I like this, and I made this big enough so you could use about an inch wide type of loop if that is what you prefer. But I like this, and it's about 5/8, so you can put it inside that tack down area anywhere you like, and then whatever portions on the inside of the bag is what you're going to be seeing on the outside when it's flipped. And I like a smaller amount on mine, so I am going to put it like that, tape it down into place, and take it back to the machine and do the tack down stitch. Alright, so there is the tack down stitch for that, and underneath. And the next thing that we need to do is you need to actually line the part where the zipper is going to open to. Otherwise you'll be opening to the raw material of the bag. So what you need to do is you need to flip it to the back side, and where all the original placement stitches were, so you can kind of see it's kind of like right there. So then you take your piece that is going to be for your lining, which will not be seen because it's on the other side of the zipper pocket, and then on the back of it is the inside of the bag, so you won't be seeing it. So I have pieced together my SF101 here. But then you take your piece and you make sure that it goes over these stitches, and then you want to make sure that it goes over where the top placement is and the bottom placement. So just make sure you have it all in the right spot, and go ahead and tape that into place. Alright, so turn the hoop over to the right side, and we are actually now going to be adding the front portion, or the inside portion, what we did from hoop number 1. And what you need to do is, your zipper doesn't have to be open, but kind of just make sure it's out of the way and laying flat. I like to tape this into place. And these lines that we drew, just remind you, this line here and this line here were the important lines, and we need those so that we can line this up in the proper place. So what I'm going to do is just draw this here, coming in a little so we can see it. So the important part of this is where this edge tack down and this line here meet. That is where we need to line hoop number 1 piece up with. So you take your hoop number 1 piece and you take where this straight part is and you fold it forward so it kind of goes straight across. Where'd my tape go? And you tape that down like that. So you can do it on top like I've done, or underneath is also the other option. But you need this to be straight, flat across, like that. And then you line it up so that this line will match with this line on both sides, and it matches there. So you want that for both sides. Alright, so now that we have this all ready to go, and you can see these top little pieces are all lined up. Then we can take it back to the machine, and we are going to run the piece that holds all of these together, which is a one line stitch here. So on here it's going to just be a line, but that's going to be the opening in the lining portion, which is where we're going to need to turn the bag. So right now we just know we need to run the one line to hold all of this together. Alright, so I have gone and done this stitch right here, which is going to hold it all together. And the last thing that we have to do for this bag is make sure everything on this tab portion is taped down, because it's very thick and you don't want that to get caught on your machine. So you need to take the other piece that will be seen inside the bag, and you need to put it over top of everything, just like you did the one underneath with the zipper, and make sure you have all of these placement stitches on the side covered there and the outside one, and make sure you have the top covered, and then you either tape that or pin it into place, and we'll take it back to the machine and we'll do the last stitch. Looks kind of a little bit like a U, and that's going to hold these all together and leave a turning hole right here. And she is done. So I did do that stitch in white. Let's see if you can see it all there. And you can see right here is the turning hole. So now comes the best part. You take it out and you cut it out around the edges. And I like to leave around 1/4 of an inch or so, and make sure when you're taking and cutting around it that you clip the corners. As well, for the turning hole, you need to make sure that you leave enough at the turning hole. So we give that a little clip. So you need to make sure that at the turning hole, you're giving yourself enough material so that you will be able to close the turning hole. So what I do is I cut that, and I cut that, and I go ahead and I just tape that up and out of the way right now, so that I can cut out the rest of the bag with my pinking shears, clip the corners, and we'll be ready to turn. Alright, I just want to show you how actually thick this gets, because there is quite a bit of material here. So that's the bottom, and this is the top, so there's a little less, but you do have the material from the tabs in there as well. So if you're planning on adding a batting, just remember how thick it is. So I don't recommend a batting for beginners at all. Alright, so you can see that with all that thickness, it does take a little bit of time to turn and with my fingers. So then the next thing that you need to do, because this is the inside of the bag, right? So here's the card pockets. So the next thing that you need to do is kind of tuck this piece in here. And I like to press that. Everything else helps me out. And then you seal up the bag whichever way you please. I like to sew it shut. So I'm going to go ahead and sew that shut, and I will be right back. All right, I'm back. I went and I stitched up my seam to close it up there. So the next thing that we have to do, since this is the wrong side, we need to flip it to the right side. Now be very gentle with these little side flaps because you don't want to tear those. So I find the easiest thing to do is start by pushing up the bottom. And this is even more important in the narrow version because it is very skinny compared to your hand trying to push it up. And there we have the right side of the pouch. And before you close the inside, make sure you have all of the corners pushed in, pushed out properly, otherwise you won't be able to do it at this point. So I like to do that. And again, I give it a press, makes all the edges nice, avoid the plastic zipper. And the only thing left, because I did not put a magnetic snap in, obviously, is to go ahead and add the snap. So I like to add the snap on the top portion, and as far as adding it on the inside, I actually unzip the zipper so I can do it through here so that I will not be able to see it on the inside. So let me just show you the inside. Maybe a little hard to see. So you've got the card pockets over here. Voila. All right, guys. So I hope you like that project. I hope you'll give it a try. It's a little bit more for an intermediate in the hooper, I would say. But if you take your time, anybody can do it. So I would like you to go ahead and subscribe, smash that button if you have not, and have a wonderful day, and thank you for watching.